Part two of cardio, kind of break this down a little bit more beyond the definition because the questions are understandable. When do I do cardio? How often do I do cardio? And what type of cardio should I be doing? And what are some of the pitfalls of doing them wrong, incorrectly? And then also have over here some examples we'll talk about, like, okay, during hypertrophy, what types of cardio pair well with hypertrophy? Which ones pair well with strength? Which ones pair well with power and speed? You're going to see there's a little bit of overlap, but it's more of looking at the one thing that cardio means, and that means heart. So all of these things are, to some degree, have to be measured, they have to be metered, they have to be evaluated, and I'm going to repeat this over and over. There is no exact one-size-fits-all program, right? You always look at your current state. Your current state of readiness cannot be bypassed by arbitrary times and distances. What does that mean? If you are an untrained athlete, you can't just force this volume or an intensity on you and get the result. It's incremental. It's the exact same thing as like a squat, right? You have a goal, like someone wants to be a world-class powerlifter and they're 22 years old. And they can only squat 350 at some point. They can't just be like, well, my goal is going to be 600 someday, so I might as well just split the difference. I'm going to start squatting 405 today. No, that's what I mean. Your current state of aerobic cardiovascular development cannot be bypassed by jumping into arbitrary miles. Arbitrary means, well, you got to run 40 miles a week. You got to run 50 miles a week. You got to run 60. Like, okay, shit, like, the manual says I got to run 60 miles a week. Well, fuck, okay. Well, then you start doing it and you realize real quickly you can't accomplish the distances. You can't accomplish the distances at a pace that's reasonable. And on the third part of that is you don't heal and recover from those arbitrary distances and paces. So we measure everything. You can measure it by distance, measure it by time. We use pulse oximeter in a combination of that the same way track and field does. And then also over here, you don't see it yet, but I have charted out a graph that I'm going to talk through about arbitrary distances and time for the untrained, a person's average, and then your goal here. And I'll show you how it's done in a physiological classroom, exercise physiology classroom. I'm going to keep it super basic and straightforward, but it gives you the idea like, oh yeah, I can't just untrained start at a certain miles and time, because to like the 4 mile to 1.5 miles to get those qualifying times, you have to run a certain pace. And if you can't, the same with, we notice this a lot in a pool. People are like, man, I got to swim 500 meters side stroke, and like they hit a wall, literally or figuratively. They cannot breathe after 150, 200, and you think like, oh my God, how am I going to ever maintain this pace, let alone, like, how am I going to finish, but let alone maintain a quick pace to where like, and that's where it gets everyone in the underwater swim. They're like, I have a hard time swimming 25 to 50 meters on top of the water. I'm out of breath. How am I ever going to swim 50 meters under the water when I don't get to breathe? So that's all developed, right? We developed that ability. You're not born with it. I wasn't born with this ability. And that's why we talk so much about background. What have you done? Are you sedentary? Did you have a background of high aerobic sports? Did you have a good combination of aerobic and anaerobic sports, power sports? What did you do growing up, right? Maybe you were an outdoorsman. You're a snowboarder. You're doing parkour. Awesome, right? It's not a given that athletes are going to do well, but it gives us as coaches a good place to start programming and measuring from, okay? So jumping into here, and there's a couple absolute nevers to do in a way. Then we go, well, what if this never turns into a need? And we'll get to that here in a second. So when cardio can be done in various kinds of cardio, can be done a couple different ways. It can be done by itself, just that's all you do that day. And a lot of times that's because it's if your run or your swim for these selection courses is your biggest weakness or the biggest area you need to improve, it becomes a very high nervous system demand. The run does, or the swim does. It's very demanding on the nervous system because of what the condition, that environment puts you in. the breath rate, the stress, the pound, all the stuff that happens physiologically for someone in which the running and the swimming. And that's not to say that you're not a good athlete. You're an offensive lineman. You might be an extremely good athlete, but the aerobic base hasn't been developed to the level of selection. You might have a good aerobic base developed for football. But again, that's what we're going to try and show you, okay? And by itself, we say we're going to program the run by itself in a single day by itself, right? We do not ever, really, there's occasions we do, but typically speaking, when you start your program and you start working into it weeks, months, and a year, you do not ever put legs and back day on the same days you're going to run, ruck, or do an intense swim if you need to swim. If you're like a world-class swimmer, you can use swimming as a recovery bout, like myself. Swimming, I could swim any day. I could swim on legs day. I could swim on because I had such a good breath rate and ability. My technique was high. Now, was it necessary to be redundant? No, and I didn't really do that unless I used it as a recovery day, right? And that's a whole other subject, right? A whole other video. Because what you're going to do is you're going to pair cardio, your heart stuff, with low central nervous system demand days, okay? And we're going to be able to do that. You can, it can be a day by itself, or you can start doubling up, right? Biceps, triceps, shoulders, athletics day. You can start adding cardio to those days as long as, right, we have food and time to recover. We don't go from, and here we're going to get to something that never do's here in a minute, okay? If you're doing 2-a-days, you make sure that there is time in between the two. You can do cardio in the morning and resistance training in the afternoon, or vice versa, whatever it might be. But we want to make sure we have time in between so we can refuel with food and let our metabolic sort of enzymatic processes start reboot, recalibrate, and we give ourselves some time. And if we end up trying to do both in one day, or stacked them two in one day, and we're like, okay, I can't do both in one day. So what do? We take the one that we need to do, let's say running, in this case cardio. I'm going to do cardio. Let's say you paired it with shoulders. You just slide shoulders to the next day. And then you find out, hey, can I pair that up? And everything just slides. That's why it's a block format. Just slides over. Just slides over. Monday is an International Bench Day, right? Day one is day one. It's not always on Monday. Like it doesn't, and that's where you go wrong, okay? We don't attribute workouts to days of this week, of any week, ever. And when we get to holidays and stuff, a lot of people go, oh man, the freedom. I can space it out. I can train hard. I can eat. I'm resting. I'm relaxing. I'm home from college, all these sort of things. And so we really get sometimes, unless we get pulled in a bunch of different directions when we're on leave or we're on holiday, we tend to get really good training in that day because we rest, we're hanging around family we love, we're eating good food, things like that, okay? One of the big rules, if you're not training intensely and you're trying to find hormonal balance and all these other sort of benefits from ice baths, do it. You're old, you're not competitive, you have no intention to be performance oriented, you don't give a shit about your muscle, you don't care about how fast you recover. But if you're getting in an ice bath after you're doing intense cardio, you are really, really stopping the healing process, not only of your muscle, but think about this. When you run vigorously, you do it all the time, cardio, you do consistent, regular cardio in which it doesn't hurt, has moments of intensity, you do it regularly. What happens? What happens physiologically is not just your muscle belly improves, but from hey, they get bigger. But why do they get bigger? Why do you get more oxygen saturation through your body? Why does your pulse oxygen improve when you do cardio? Is it just because your heart's stronger? Yes, but you got to think what goes from your heart, your arteries, your veins. Your veins then go where? And arteries go into what? They go into capillary beds. The fine multitude, millions of capillary beds go into your skin, go into your fascia, go into your tendons, go into your muscles. It's an extension, think of when you watch fungus grow, those little fingers and arms. That has a tremendous amount of surface area relative to your vascular system. And when you jump into an ice bath or get into a cold water that's way too cold, your capillaries they stunt. You don't get blood flow into the extreme extremities, and you don't get blood saturation to those extreme extremities. You don't get oxygen blood flow, oxygen into those extreme extremities. And when you don't get blood flow, don't get oxygen, you don't get nutrients. If you don't get nutrients, you don't heal. Now, there might be some other enzymatic benefits, right? Certainly they talk about those. But what they don't talk about is what happens to your muscles, what happens to your tendons, what happens to your ligaments, and what happens to your cardiovascular ability. It does not improve. It does not. And so at all costs, if you are needing to improve your cardiovascular state, you do not get an ice bath. Don't. Contrast baths are different. Contrast baths are not ice baths. And if you look at the research, most contrast baths are not going to ask you to get in below 61 degree water, but that's regional. Like someone from Iowa, 61 degrees. Someone from Trinidad or South America, probably not 61 degrees, because I had firsthand experience of we had some guys from Trinidad come to Virginia. We did a seminar. It was in the middle of the winter. And we told everyone to go home and make sure, it was like kind of the fall. I said, make sure you keep your rooms at 59, or 69, 68 degrees. And those guys came in the next morning and they didn't sleep a bit. And they're like, do we really have to keep our room at 68 degrees? We're like, no, you don't. It's relative to what you're experienced to, okay? So we do not want to throw you or anybody, unless you're a fucking Eskimo, maybe into some ice. Maybe, right? But that's not a good thing. So moving on. How often am I going to do cardio? Here's where everyone wants to know, like I got to know. Your personal goals, your current state of readiness, and your timeline, right? If someone's like, holy shit, I got 3 months to get ready for buds, and they put it off, it's like, you're going to be running way more frequently. You're going to start omitting some of your strength, almost all of your resistance training, other than maybe some of your high volume arm stuff and high volume shoulder and stuff. You're not going to stress out the nervous system by squatting and deadlifting and things like that, because you're going to spend your time turning into trying, like aggressively trying to put 5 pounds into a 3-pound bag. And so we don't want to put it off, because your timeline determines frequency. Your personal state of readiness determines frequency. If you're trying to run an ultra marathon compared to improve your 1.5 miles, that's your state of readiness, and goals will change that, right? So we're gonna kind of go through this, because you have to start adding a certain amount of frequency and types into your hypertrophy, strength, power, and speed, or various things to see what's going on. Well, how do we see that? It's not by taking the PST every time. It's by measuring all of your runs, measuring your heart rate, measuring your distance, seeing. You have to become a runner. You have to understand, how do runners always get faster and better? How are they always splits, measurements, looking that you see a lot of people with GPS seeing splits. You run the same route over and over and over, just like you would a PST, to see, well, at what point I'll get to the graph of what point am I getting diminishing return? And at what point, if I'm not getting diminishing return, where do I throttle up? What do I do, right? And that's what we're going to be talking about, because the goals, like I said, your current state of readiness and your timeline determine frequency. And here's the other one, right? Just like ice baths. You never, ever, except for one case, ever want to do resistance training, right, after cardio. So you don't want to go for a run, you don't want to go for a ruck, you don't want to go for a long swim, and then immediately go to the gym. Like, okay, you can do run, ruck, swim, cardio in the morning, right? Have breakfast, have a snack, go to work half a day, have lunch, have a snack, and then do it the afternoon or evening. Fine, not so much a problem, okay? But ideally, you do not want to do it before. Why? You go into, it's called catabolic or catabolism with a C. Okay? The time this is okay. The only time that you want to go catabolic is if you are a 330-pound former pro bodybuilder. We've done that person. He's a ranger. If you've ever been a 318 or 307-pound Division I offensive lineman, we've done those guys. We purposely change their diet to go into ketosis. We purposely have them do cardio and then immediately lift weights, because what does it do? It makes you go catabolic. Catabolic means the muscles in your body become the most readily available source of glycogen. that replenishes, refuels as part of ATP. It's our energy. We think of hypertrophy or glycolytic energy system. One of the most abundant. It's stored in our muscle bellies and it's stored in our liver. But we are purposely having this person go into muscle wasting. So we always have them do cardio and then lift weights. So if you're running around a fucking park, lifting weights while you're running, doing all this sort of heavy exertion, you are wasting your muscle. And the muscle is where we transport oxygen. The muscle we need. We need to have muscle. So we have a good, really good, robust aerobic capillary system. We need that. Like having muscle doesn't make you slow, right? But you're not a runner. Because if you were a runner, you'd be 106 to 110 pounds. You're not a runner. Doesn't mean you can't be good at running from an aerobic standpoint and do cardio. But if you want to be a runner, a competitive runner, a good runner, you want to be fucking even decent at running, you better be under 130 pounds on the world stage. Like 130 pounds is real heavy, okay? So, moving on. Do not do cardio before resistance training. Don't do it, right? Unless you want to get rid of your muscle, period, okay? All right, the duration, how often? Duration, again, is based on time distance goals at or above threshold until threshold is met. Okay, what does that mean? I'm running, and I'll chart this on the graph. I'm running, and I'm charting I'm feeling, I'm seeing my times, I'm checking my splits, and I'm running a 400, and I keep a certain pace that I'm trying to keep. Got it. I go to 800, I'm keeping it. I keep going at that pace. I don't try to ramp up, I'm trying to hold that pace. 400, you go again, boom. Starting to slow down a little bit, but it's still within acceptable range. Mile in, boom, your pace completely changes. And you're trying. Doesn't matter, I got fucking arms swinging, trying my ass off. Your next 400, it's still garbage. You have ran into threshold. It's the same thing we talk about in swimming. You come off the wall, you swim as hard as you can, 75 meters in, you're like, oh my God, I can't keep this pace. You have met your aerobic measured threshold. So swimming beyond that and thinking, I'm going to get fast one day. No, you won't, because you did not manage or pursue an optimal threshold until you've met that aerobic threshold, right? It's the same with the squat. I want to squat 500 pounds, but I only squat 225. I can't just put 500 pounds on the bar and go, well, here it comes. It doesn't work that way. Doing more of something arbitrarily, distance and time. So what do? We have to challenge ourselves differently in those distances early on to improve our threshold early on. So we can do what? Continue and increase that threshold before the door shuts. You can't walk through a door when the door is shut, okay? So we need to learn how to prop the door open, work real hard, back off. Prop the door open, work real hard, back off. Get that door open further, and then we can get through it. And we create a further and longer threshold, okay? You have to be smooth, you have to be efficient before that, ahead of time. We can't just all of a sudden spike our work output and think, I can maintain this forever. Because if it was that easy, man, we would just sprint as fast as humanly possible for every single run and not even take any account of pacing. And that's what happens. It's like, well, if I can't run a mile and a half fast, I'm just going to run for 6 hours. But what if your first mile and a half still sucked? Every single day you run for 6 hours or 3 hours, but your first mile and a half of every single time never gets faster. That's the other indicator. We know that running distances doesn't ever help the front end, okay? That's why we have intervals, interval repeaters, tempo runs, rucking, high intensity interval training. So what type? We have slow, steady, where pace is maintained over or at goal and target distance. Like say, hey, I'm only running a 1050, right? So how do I get better at that? I have to get better at a 1050 before 1050. That's what I'm working on. I'm working all the time before an effort before that 1050. And if I start making myself more efficient, allowing for recovery, that 1050 will get slower. Like, holy shit, now I'm at 1010. Like, what happened? Didn't run just a bunch of miles. Of course you didn't, okay? interval repeaters. Interval repeaters are repeatable with known unchanged distance or a planned unchanged distance. So like, let's say I'm trying to work 1.5 miles, and I'm gonna set up a 400 max effort run with a work to rest ratio of whatever that time was. Let's say I ran a 400 a minute. I'm gonna take a minute off. And then instead of run 400 again, because I know I've done that last week, I tried to run a 400 again, and it was 1:25. I'm like, fuck, I didn't repeat that at all. I didn't get better, I got slower. So instead of doing a 400 again, we go, let's see here, let's do a 200. Oh, okay, and see what that time is. 1-to-1 work to rest ratio, or 1-to-2, or 1-to-3, or 1-to-5, whatever the goal is. Do a 200 again. Okay, I was able to repeat that, but it was starting to get really slow. So then what? I do 100. Okay, work to rest ratio, 1-to-1, 1-to-3, 1-to-5, 1-to-7. I do 100 again. Okay, I'm repeating it. 100 again, boom. By the third 100, it's like, not quite there. I go down to 50s. Now I accumulate all that distance and go, holy shit, man, I just ran 1.5 miles in 4 minutes. Wait, what? Yes, your time under effort or time under tension can be accumulated as long as you manage your work to rest ratio. That's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't have to be 400, 400, 400, 400, 400. That's what I mean by a known, unchanged. Like I get really good at it. We do 16 200-meter repeaters. Like, holy fuck, man. Yes, you can do that if you manage your work to rest ratio. Or we go, I'm doing a planned changed. 400 once, 200 twice, 4 100s, 6 50s. You add that up and go, damn, that was 1.5 miles, like I just ran it. Yes, that is what interval repeaters are, okay? Tempo runs. You're looking at a goal pace, you're looking at a goal distance, you're looking at a goal time or some conglomerate of them. When you're not meeting goal tempo, pace, time, or distance, you assess, okay, well, how do I get more out of this tempo? Do I need to change my distance? Do I need to change my time, my goal, or my goal pace? And when you start manipulating that and finding where you are actually being challenged, but you can recover from it, that's why tempos are so very good. It allows for that to happen, for you to maximally recover. We change the tempo the next day, either distance, time, or whatever it might be. We challenge you a little bit differently in these different windows that you know that you can accomplish. And when you're constantly accomplishing these physiological feats in these distances, in these times, in these goal paces, your body adapts to that, not maladapt, okay? Then we have high intensity interval training, repeatable, loaded efforts managed by work-rest ratio, right? Good weight room stuff. Drop the weights in volume or in mass intensity and start being very aggressive. The CrossFit kind of has taken that sort of moniker of that's what high intensity interval training is, but CrossFit's not smart metabolically at all. So you follow real work to rest ratios depending on you able to accomplish it. When we're working high intensity interval trainings, we can be out to 1-to-7. Work to rest. So if your set's 20 seconds long to accomplish X with high accuracy, you maybe start off to 1-to-3. It's a minute rest. Like, okay, I need more. We add another 20 seconds, add another, so on, or we take away. We start manipulating, because some exercises, you are more efficient than others. And so you can start manipulating from 1-to-1 all the way to 1-to-7 for high intensity interval trainings. We don't just go, again faster, again faster. That's the same arbitrary nonsense, okay? Again faster never gets you faster. Again more never gets you more. It just gets you tired, overtrained, and it teaches you at the point of great stress in the event to fail at that point that you failed in training, okay? Like I said, there is no exact one-size-fits-all program. A current state of readiness cannot be bypassed with arbitrary times and distances. And I like to say a broken record is right twice a day. So like, well, yeah, Jeff, what if, but this guy, that, blah, 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 blah. Awesome. But all of those guys, all of those exceptions you're referring to, right? It's the Bulgarian method. Let's take 100 people, let's kick the shit out of them. The person that survives is going to be a world champion. Yes, there are going to be some people that can just accumulate all this miles, but not a single person that was a good runner in my green team or my buds class made it to the command. All of our good runners stuck around at the Whiteside Seals with their thumb up their ass, okay? So I'm gonna give you some examples here. So during hypertrophy, what do I add in? What can I add? What are options? Not absolutes, options. But keep in mind, these are measured. These are not arbitrary suggestions. You have to pick a goal distance. Based on your state of readiness. Because I'm not standing with you with a pulse oximeter. I'm not there looking at your splits. Those videos are online too. You have to take stock. Just like a sniper school. No one's going to shoot it for you. You got to shoot. So during hypertrophy, we're looking with rucking with light weight. And that's body weight determined. A percentage of your body weight, right, is going to go, and those are on our programs. So go into the rucking 2.0 program, and the percentage is there because you can take it and plop it in. Not on legs and back day. Okay, and then you're going to rotate. Maybe the first non-legs day, you do rucking. The second non-legs day, maybe you do a run. The third non-legs day or athletic day, you do a swim. Or maybe you do 2 rucks, then 2 runs, then 2 swims. I don't know what your lifestyle is. I don't know what your state of readiness is. You have to sprinkle and put those in based on also your goals, your times, like I said. Like, shit, if you have a year and a half, spread them out, man. You got plenty of time. If you have a year, you've got plenty of time. But if you're all of a sudden realizing you've been following arbitrary distances in time, and holy shit, I'm not getting faster, what do? Well, you either fucking pray and hope, right? Or maybe you start sprinkling in actual training, okay, instead of arbitrary times and distances. Moderate light tempos, right? There's different types of tempos. Some can be incredibly intense, right? If you're a marathoner, your tempo is different than if you're trying to do your 1.5 miles, okay? Brisk walks are always really good. What is a brisk walk? When you're breathing through your nose at a distance and time that you're going over, really trying to get not overly stressed. You're trying to work. You're trying to nasal breathe. You're trying to just have this really nice, steady 30, 40-minute good zone 2 would call it, I guess. This is also a bit of a myth, okay? Technique fin swims, right? That's what is hypertrophy? Repeat, rest. Repeat, rest in the weight room. Repeat, rest. Lots of redundancy. That's what rucking is. Rucking is very redundant. Swimming with high technique with fins, very redundant. Not trying to swim as fast as I can, not swimming as long as I can. I'm picking a pace and I'm picking a distance, and I'm not going to let my pace deviate over that distance. That's hypertrophy, right? Brisk hill and incline walks. These types of cardio more closely mimic the contraction state of what you experience in a weight room. Moderate, heavy, short rucks during strength. Steep hill walks with light weight. Steeper, right? Slower contraction, more effort, not crashing and falling and things falling apart. Steady sled pulls for time. So if you have to run for 28 minutes, clip a sled into your waist, a very light weight, and just walk in circles nonstop. Don't change your pace somewhere, or down and back for 7 minutes, 14 minutes, 21 minutes, 28 minutes. Not heavy sleds, okay? At a contraction rate that is modulated and controlled over the entire time. That's strength, okay? Brisk, slow walks. Nice, steady, slow walks. They can be long, okay? Again, increase those capillary beds. Get oxygen in the muscles. Slow, long fin technique work. Get bigger fins. You're moving more water. You're not swimming faster. You're not swimming extra time. You're trying to go over a known distance and a known time working technique, pushing more water. Every kick's the same. Known distance, known time. Okay, start off again at 7 minutes. Can I go to 14? Can I go to 21? Can I go to 28? That's what you're measuring. And if your pace slows down, you stop. You recalibrate, right? Maybe you repeat. That's where repeat intervals come in, okay? Power and speed, light, fast, short ruck walks. Light and fast, 20 pounds, 15 pounds. Not running, walk as fast as possible, okay? Interval sprints. Short sprint, repeat. Short sprint, repeat. Short sprint repeat. 50s, 100s, 50s, 100s, 40s, 20s. Dynamic, fast, repeat, 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 repeat. Short, fast tempo runs, same issue, okay? Short and quick, short and quick, short and quick, rest. Short and quick, high intensity intervals, okay? So, really quick charting of what the hell's going on and what's going on and what's going on, okay? So, what we're looking at here in red is the goal. Like, hey, if I'm trying to run distance, and here's my time, and I need to run this, I need to, on paper, I'm tested, I need to get here, okay? That's where I gotta get, okay? So I'm looking at this time, at this distance. That's my goal, okay? This is looking at the average person. They come out, if they don't know how to pace themselves, what ends up happening is over time, quicker than the goal, they get slower. They're slower, okay? And if down here, if I need to be down here in the red, excuse me, because if I need to be down here, down in this pace, to get to here, by starting in this pace here, right here, and if I continue that pace, I end up past up here, not in the goal, right? But most people come out fast as shit. Most people really, I'm trying to chart this wrong. Most people come out like this. They come out super fast in their sprint, and then boom, they hit a fucking wall real quick. So again, if you do not have the aerobic base, like these people, to start and maintain a pace that gets here, because we don't like, well, I'm going to go out real slow and then sprint the last bit. No one does this. No one comes out running real slow and then fucking sprints to the end. Nobody does that. Nobody can do that. So, but most people come out real fast, they hit a fucking wall, boom. And they go, well, I'm just going to run further and slower. And then they finally like, holy shit, that took me 40 minutes to finally get that distance. So by running arbitrary distances that say run further, from a physiological standpoint, never, ever in the history of man, in the history of humanity, not one time, not one human that's ever walked this earth has ever ran greater distances to improve their short duration of aerobic threshold. It's mathematically impossible. So the next time someone says run 50, 60, 70, 80, whatever miles, go, why? Show me on this chart, because this is how we do it in track and field. You chart it out, pace time. Like, okay, if I need to get to this goal and this person's here, we need to start working in these sprint distances right here. Sprint interval, sprint interval, sprint interval, sprint interval, sprint interval, sprint interval. And then we get this better. That's what happens. And then all of a sudden our time gets lower. And that's what track and field does. We're always working in this threshold on the front end. We are not ever working on the threshold back here, hoping that it's going to get somehow faster when we get fucking tired. So, arbitrary distances do not work. Arbitrary times do not work. What works is oxygen saturation, real-time data pacing, okay, and given distances in which we can manage and measure the threshold. That way we can improve our threshold, not just hope that someday, well, I'd fucking quit before I'd die before I quit nonsense. Physiology would totally disagree with that. You're going to quit when your body can't do it anymore, no matter how strong this shit is. Physiology wins.